Hello, everyone. Welcome to QTRIC's second annual Zero Emission Bus Technologies and Transit Operations Conference. Before we begin, I'd like to share that we've got closed captions available in both French and English. You can enable this tool by clicking directly below the video stream. That said, quick introductions. My name is Soumya Balsar. I'm project manager on the Pan-Canadian Hydrogen Fuel Cell Bus project at QTRIC. And it is my pleasure to welcome you to the first exhibit by a platinum sponsor, NewFlyer. I'm joining you today from Calgary, Alberta, and in the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, the Tsuut'ina, the Îyârhe Nakoda Nations, the Métis Nation, Region 3, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. Again, I'd like to thank NewFlyer, Motor Coach Industries, Alexander Dennis Limited, Arbok Specialty Vehicles, and NFI Parts for sponsoring the event. We have with us Dr. Mike McDonald, who's Operations Manager at NewFlyer Group's Vehicle Innovation Center. Welcome on stage, Michael.
Hey, Soumya.
Hi, Michael. Yeah, and so the stage is all yours.
Okay, excellent. I believe my presentation is going to get uploaded here. Wonderful. Well, thanks so much again for the intro, Soumya. And I hope everybody's enjoying this QTRIC meeting. It's been a fantastic meeting so far, and we've only just begun. So I thought I'd take the next 15 minutes or so to talk a little bit about NewFlyer's a viewpoint of hydrogen in transit buses, and specifically highlight some of the features of our prized product, the Excelsior Charge H2. So first, a little bit about me. My name is Mike McDonald. I'm the operations manager for our Vehicle Innovation Center. A couple of words on the VIC. It's a physical space that's located in Anniston, Alabama. We're going on 5 years now, and basically we were established to cement our reputation as being leaders in bus and coach technology, and really realizing our greater goal, which is to connect people to places. So in addition to providing customer training and education, we also have some really cool interactive tools. We have these interactive exhibits with VR learning displays. We even have an electric bus simulator. And for the past couple of years, though, we've mostly been shuttered down and been doing things virtually, much like these QTRIC meetings. But it's been a success in its own right. So first, let's talk a little bit more in general about fuel cell electric buses. I guess the main take-home point here that I, am constantly having to drive home here is that it is still an EV. It's an electric vehicle, except the power source is different. And so what's really important here is to take the viewpoint of the transit agency or of the transit industry rather. So basically the duty cycle in transit is considerably different than most other drive cycles. It's extremely erratic. It's all start-stop. Most of it is in urban environments. And so this is incredibly demanding, especially from a power demand kind of standpoint. So batteries in general, we know that we have range issues associated with batteries, but batteries are extremely good at handling power density. And when I say power density, I mean taking a lot of energy right away to take a big heavy bus and bringing it up to speed, only to have it slow down again for the next bus stop. So, between that angle and the fact that we need the bus to be operating for longer periods of time, and so still needing longer range, we need to take advantage of the higher energy density of hydrogen. And so really, it's kind of a hybrid approach that we've taken that directly responds to this very demanding duty cycle. So essentially, we have what we like to think of as being a battery dominant type of approach, where we have a larger than usual type of battery that's able to handle this constant erratic drivetrain. And then we have a fuel cell operating in the background to constantly be recharging that energy storage system in the background. So you can kind of think of it as being sort of like an onboard recharger. So taking a step back here, a little bit about why anybody would want to adopt hydrogen fuel cell types of buses. The first, of course, being get those emissions down. And so I have a cheeky little comment note written there that technically fuel cell electric buses aren't zero emission. They're just no carbon in the emissions. There's no nitrogen. There's no sulfur, anything like that. It's just pure clean water. So it's a great way to go zero emissions. With the extended range, as I had just mentioned, hydrogen itself is a very energy dense fuel, and so you get that range, especially when you compare it to the energy density of lithium-ion batteries. And so just like with diesel or CNG, for example, you're kind of only limited in your range by the amount of fuel that you're able to carry. And because hydrogen, just like CNG and just like diesel, is a fluid, it makes for fast refueling. So when you think of the type of infrastructure that's needed for battery electric, doing a big electrical upgrade at your depot, or installing and designing very sophisticated overhead types of chargers, are just aspects that you don't need to really consider. Also, and especially important for Canada, lots of free heat here, so we're able to capture waste heat just like we do in internal combustion engine vehicles. So in our colder climates, we want to extract as much energy as possible. And I guess probably the biggest point of that being that the energy or the range consistency as a function of the season that you're in is far less affected because you're able to capture that. And then finally, last point there, it performs just like a diesel. So when you're thinking about your CapEx, when you're thinking about replacing diesel buses, because we get the high performance, the higher range, and zero emission, you could think of it as being a 1-for-1 zero emission bus replacement. And of course, again, it's an EV, so you still get all the benefits of electric drive. You get the lower maintenance costs, you get lower noise levels, and you get that smoother acceleration from that electric motor. So a little bit more onto fuel cells. So how do we extract all of this great energy that we have in the hydrogen molecules? We could take it and put it into a traditional internal combustion engine, and indeed that is kind of a possibility. As you can see on the middle of the slide there, the chemical reaction of hydrogen is very much like that used in traditional fossil fuels. It is combustion. You take a fuel, combine it with oxygen, and you get energy and some waste products that are involved. And the only difference really being is that we don't have carbon in this equation as well. So we could technically take that, put it into a conventional engine, but we want to extract even more efficiency. And hydrogen is enabled to do that with an electrochemical process. This is what happens in a fuel cell here. So what we're doing is we're taking that overall combustion reaction and we're separating it into the two half reactions. So we have oxidation at one electrode and reduction at another, and then we connect the whole thing around with an external circuit. And that electric current that runs through that circuit to complete that reaction can power loads just like traction motors, for example. So that's the ins and outs of kind of how it works. I like to think of it as kind of being like an organized type of combustion that's still zero emission and still has greater efficiency in there as well as lower noise. That's an important point as well. So that's the fuel cell portion of it. The fuel itself it has to be stored on the bus as well. So this shows some other components. So we've got the tanks here. And if you have any experience operating CNG types of buses, a lot of this stuff might look familiar to you. So we still have composite tanks for our hydrogen tanks. They're of course specialized to handle that particular type of gas at high pressures. Each of the tanks that we utilize can contain 7.5 kilograms of usable hydrogen, and we use a 350 bar standard pressure system. For the fill panel, again, looks a lot like CNG here. There have been a couple modifications, but the ports and the gauges, a lot of it is very similar. Really, all that changes is the type of fuel that you're using, but it is still a combustible gas. So all the technology is great, and I could probably talk about it ad nauseum, but I think the one important point here that often gets overlooked is that the technology is only one part of it, and it's kind of useless if it's not put onto a good platform. So I do want to take the opportunity to shout out all of our great engineers that have come up with our Excelsior Bus Platform. That's the culmination of many decades of experience in designing buses here at NewFlyer. But this bus platform has been on the road since 2010, has recorded over 1 billion miles of revenue service, and is really built for that accessibility and maintainability. And we have literally tens of thousands out there in the wild today. So it's the high tech stuff married onto a proven platform that enables our Excelsior Charge H2. And so speaking of, just wanted to give you a little bit of what the guts of the bus looks like when we take the fuel cell and all the tanks and put them on board. Of course, we take advantage of all the a lot of available real estate that we have on the roof in terms of storing tanks. We also have the energy storage system on there. So again, it is a as we like to say, battery dominant system. So we do have a relatively large energy storage system, power electronics. And then where we'd normally be storing a big Horkin diesel engine, we now have the fuel cell stack itself. You can kind of think of that as being the zero emissions engine that's placed on Excelsior. We have this available in both 40 foot and 60 foot. So you can see how 60 foot lays out here. We have some additional tanks on board and then some extra diagrams here at the bottom to help you visualize how that bus is all put together and how we integrate all that technology onto Excelsior. So what comes out at the end? Everybody, of course, always asks about range. I very easily sidestepped some of the more specifics about it. But this gives real hard numbers of how this bus performs. These numbers were taken at Altoona in the United States, which is necessary testing to sell to our US customers. And I do apologize here. Most of my numbers here are shown in miles. I probably should have changed them over to kilometers. But the fact of the matter is we run the bus under very different duty cycles and we get very different numbers, just like we would with battery electric or any other bus. But the point is that these numbers are relatively high. So if you are familiar with battery electric buses, you're kind of thinking more closer to the 200-mile type of range. Here with fuel cell electric, we get closer to and above the 300-mile range. So now we're talking close to 600 kilometers here. And this isn't just in the more laboratory types of conditions. We've also seen it with real customers adopting our technology and putting it out there on the road. So just shown, for example, here in Orange County, which admittedly is a little bit of an easier environment to operate in than, say, Winnipeg, where I'm located. But nonetheless, we're seeing on the high end there that this bus is proving that I can get, close to that, between 500 and 600 mile mark very regularly. So it really does perform out there if range is the name of your game. So taking a step away from the bus and just kind of talking a little bit more generally of hydrogen as a fuel, it's important to note that the molecule itself isn't some sort of brand new type of technology. It's already utilized in petroleum products and many other industrial types of processes. And so the point here being that we know how to produce it. We know how to handle it. There's a lot of existing infrastructure and expertise that's out there. Like I said, of course, it has excellent energy density. And I also had mentioned that just like CNG and diesel, it's a fluid. And that is really what is enabling the fast refueling here. And so you can basically operate fuel cell electric buses just like you do with diesel buses in terms of the logistics, both at your yards as well as running your routes. So just a couple of the basic basic questions around the infrastructure itself. A couple of points here that you don't need to double up on your infrastructure. You don't need an H2 type of infrastructure plus battery electric chargers. So what you do here is you pick one. What you need to do is decide, how do you want it stored on site? Do you want to liquefy it? Do you want to keep it as a compressed gas? Are you going to be producing your own hydrogen? We've had customers who do that. Or do you have a delivered source that's available? That's obviously preferred, and depending on the situation of the supply chain is going to be growing as adoption and sort of our transition to zero emission happens. It's going to happen on the hydrogen side as well. And then on site, the prerequisites being that really you need the on-site storage of that gas, whether it's produced by yourself or it's delivered in, and some sort of fill station to do the actual refueling of your buses. And then take-home message here on the left, this graph kind of showing how the cost works out better at scale with fuel cell buses. If you're buying a couple at a time, you might cringe at what the cost is to get your refueling, but at scale, it actually works out better than battery electric. So definitely something to consider there, especially as fleet operators. You're operating on the fleet level. So some of you are talking even hundreds or thousands of buses that would be replaced. And so you do gain economies of scale there. And then I do believe this is one of my last slides here. Many of you may be familiar with the color system for for hydrogen. And I did say that there's plenty of it that exists out there. And sure, you might be able to make the argument that a lot of it is gray or dirty hydrogen, where there's a lot of emissions that are associated in its production. But I do want to make some key points here, being that you still are having zero emissions at the tailpipe. So when you're talking about your local environment that you're operating in, you still gain cleanliness there. By removing those emissions. You still get to take advantage of the all-electric drivetrain with the greater energy efficiency. You still are decreasing pollution in your neighborhood in terms of noise. And if you go ahead and you adopt this technology now, understand how it works, that hydrogen supply chain is on its way and it's becoming greener and greener as it becomes more mature. So with that, I will stop talking because I do believe that we're over time, but I do want to thank you so much for joining us today. I hope everybody's having a great time at the conference. And I did want to give a quick advertisement for some of the free and open to the public sessions that the VIC is going to be hosting. We have next up in May talking about our connected mobility solutions, which is NFI Connect, and then following that in June, talking about our accessibility solutions. So thank you so much for having me.
Thanks a lot for joining us, Michael. That was a very comprehensive presentation. Unfortunately, we won't have time to take audience questions. However, you did warm us up for a conversation on fuel cell buses for the remainder of the day, Michael. And yeah, with that said, we do have a panel coming up right after this exhibit booth on innovating a local hydrogen value chain using fuel cell buses. And so we'd be happy to address some of the audience questions at that panel. That said, I'd also like to extend my thanks to the audience joining us here. And if you missed it, I'm also thrilled to share that QTREC has been named the National Planning Service for Infra Canada's Zero Emission Transit Fund. We're excited to support transit agencies and municipalities plan their way to a zero-emission transit fleet, especially in collaboration with other stakeholders, such as NewFlyer. As you saw their expertise. To learn more, you can contact us via email or visit our website as well. And on to our next panel on local green hydrogen value chains. We'll see you there shortly. Thanks again, Michael, and thank you to our audience. Bye for now.
Thank you. Enjoy.